Hello, this is Logue Elder, and this is another installment of Let's Talk Consciousness. And I wanted to go into a topic that's kind of similar to another video I did, pushing back against negativity, but this is pushing back against limiting beliefs. Um, and for me, because work is a prominent part of my life, it's most of my daylight hours. That's where this example comes from, and I'm sure I'll think of others down the road. But basically, like many exchanges that you might have with a boss and any structure that's hierarchical that requires some amount of downward pressure to kind of keep people in those levels and keep them productive or compliant. I mean, I don't mean to use those words to sound like all that radical, but I mean, I don't know. My point of view probably is kind of radical, um, but I'm trying to make it work. I have the job. I go to work and I do the things that I'm asked to do. But anyway, so excuse me. In moments where I have some disagreement, in years past, I would not have stood up for myself at all. If my boss says you're doing this wrong, and maybe I did have some belief that I was doing the right thing, I would most often just take on that guilt is maybe not the best word, but that kind of impression that would, like any mistake you're being that's being pointed out to you, makes you feel kind of less worthy. I think there's something to be said for learning to hear that and really take it on without feeling negative when you kind of understand that you are being less than your best self, perhaps. But this is something different. This would be when you kind of have an internal sense, just a small, quiet voice that's telling you that you're actually right about this and that you ought to stand up for yourself, but you feel like you think of a reason not to. And so I've done that plenty of times in my life in various aspects. But I'm getting older and I'm kind of tired of it, and I don't care as much about the consequences, which is ironic because I have a family now and I have a lot more to lose. But I'm still trying to navigate this thing of being a little bit more bold for my own sake, because I think, if anything, it is important to my children to be a walking example of somebody who does believe in themselves and stands up for themselves and forgives themselves for their mistakes. So hopefully I don't guide us into some disaster. But anyway, so with my employer, I will sometimes push back, and so in this case today, I did have that experience, and without going into the details, because I work for an insurance company, and it's boring as shit to hear me explain why I disagreed about something. But let's just say in simple terms, um, there are things related to insurance that you have to do that are like related to your licensing, like continuing education, and I basically had a disagreement about out of pocket expenses and time spent outside of work to do these things, because my past experience with other employers is that they basically make the time for you to do these things on the clock, because it's job related, and some places don't view it that way, and that's your responsibility. It's more like you're independent, and your insurance license and all the continuing education and everything else um, is your responsibility. So it's not to say that you're guaranteed it, but I personally think that in this day and age, and for what we bring to the company that we work for, the people like myself, the phone reps basically who deal with insureds and agents, I think we're worth it. And so I did push back on this a little bit, and there was a compromise made. I didn't completely win, but I do feel good about myself for doing it. But there was a bigger thing at stake that I didn't quite land, that I wish, or maybe just I look to the future to try to do better. And that is, when that kind of thing happens, standing up for yourself is good, but the real thing, whether you stand up for yourself or not, is to not take on the negative belief that is implied in that. If it is this sense that you're not worth it, or um, maybe you have a job where there's real significant personal things going on, that I've used the example of being late, and I'm not always late. I think I probably give that impression because I always go to that example. But whatever it is, you have to take time off because your family obligations, or whatever might be cross with with your employer's expectations and at variance. Um, for you to just recognize that you're worth those kinds of compromises and kind of insist. Now, granted, in some fields, you know, that might just get you fired and somebody's waiting to take your job. But I don't think that's true in a lot of aspects. And I think that that's also the illusion that keeps us kind of quiet about things like that. Excuse me. Um, so I point that out because I think we actually could benefit from pushing back, and I think if we do it, I mean, this is nothing new, but if you do it collectively, then you get more impact. But you don't have to be radical about it. You can I another thing, like, I kind of quietly pushed for standing workstations at my company, and we finally got them. It took a long time, but they're finally ordering them, and a handful of people want them, some people don't. But that was something that when I got hired almost 2 years ago, I asked about, and I was kind of brushed off as like that's an extravagance or that's disruptive, because I mean there really wasn't a satisfying reason anyway that was given. It was just kind of brushed off, and then eventually, as the company just kind of grew up with certain things, that came about. So that was pretty rad. But so yeah, my point is not taking on the negative belief about yourself, feeling as though you are worth the risk of standing up for yourself, which is pretty daunting. And I've caved in so many times before in various situations, and not even felt as if I should have stood up for myself, even further back, or more severe examples. Um, so it does feel good to do it. Sometimes, hey, it might lead to disaster. Who knows? But I think it is a risk that that kind of boldness tends to pay off in my experience. So I will keep this brief. Um, if you are watching this and have made it this far, thank you. And if you feel compelled, please hit like or leave a comment, share, subscribe. Um, if you chanced upon this, great, and enjoy your now.